There comes a moment in life when you realize certain advice isn't just guidance. It's a warning that could protect everything you've spent decades building. I'm 83 years old. My name is Margaret, and 8 years ago, just 3 months after my husband Richard passed away, I came within 2 weeks of remarrying. 2 weeks, everything was ready. The dress had been bought, invitations were sent. A new life was waiting, and I walked away. People didn't understand. They called me cold, bitter, afraid. They said grief was clouding my judgment. They warned me I'd regret being alone. But what they didn't know, what no one tells women about remarriage after 60, is this. There are hard, uncomfortable truths, realities that can quietly destroy everything you've worked for. Not just financially, not just emotionally, but deeply, permanently. And I want to share them because I almost learned them the hard way. Sorry, Sham. Richard died on a quiet Tuesday morning, a sudden heart attack, no suffering, the kind of passing people say is merciful. But mercy doesn't prepare you for silence. The first month was a blur. Arrangements, paperwork, people filling the house with sympathy and food. But when they left, the emptiness settled in, and it was unbearable. I had never lived alone. Not once. I went from my parents' home to my husband's. At 75, I didn't know what it meant to sit in a quiet house with only my own thoughts. The loneliness wasn't just emotional. It felt physical, heavy, suffocating. That's when the voices began. You shouldn't be alone. It's not healthy. You deserve happiness. There are good men out there. My daughter, my son, my sister, friends, neighbors. Everyone had an opinion about my life. And slowly, I started believing them. That's when I met Walter, a widower, polite, stable, familiar in a comforting way. We started with coffee, then dinners, then daily phone calls. He spoke about the future, practically sensibly, about how it made sense for two people not to be alone. 6 months after Richard died, Walter proposed. Not with romance, but with logic. We can take care of each other, he said. And that phrase, it pulled me in. So I said yes. The wedding was set until 2 weeks before, when my friend Helen asked me to meet her. She told me about her sister Carol, and that conversation changed everything. Carol had remarried at 68. Her husband seemed stable, kind, responsible. But after the wedding, the truth surfaced. Debt, hidden loans, medical bills, financial obligations tied to his children. And once they were married, those problems became hers. Legally, her savings, built over 40 years, vanished. Her credit collapsed. Her home was leveraged just to survive. Within 3 years, she lost everything. I thought love would protect me, Carol had said. I didn't know a marriage license would make his problems mine. That story stayed with me because I realized something terrifying. I didn't truly know Walter's financial reality. So I asked, and his reaction told me everything. Defensive, avoidant, dismissive. What's mine is yours. What's yours is mine. But that wasn't comforting. It was frightening. I spoke to a financial advisor that same week. She didn't soften the truth. If you remarry, everything becomes exposed, she said. His debts can become your burden. His medical costs can drain your savings. His children can challenge what you thought was secure. She showed me case after case. Women in their 70s starting over. Women losing homes. Women watching their children's inheritance disappear. All of it, she said, from one decision. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, everything I built, everything I protected, everything I wanted to leave behind. Was I really willing to risk it? For companionship, something I could have without legal ties. Oh my gee. But the financial risk wasn't the only thing. There was something else, something quieter, something happening inside me. I had started changing, small things at first, adjusting my schedule, canceling plans, cooking differently, living around someone else again. And then one morning, I realized I had stopped living for myself. For the first time in my life, after 75 years, I had begun to discover freedom. Simple things. Eating when I wanted, sleeping when I felt like it, rearranging my home just because it made me happy. And slowly, I was giving that up. Again, I talked to Sardi and charmed. That's when it became clear. This wasn't just about love. It was about identity, freedom, security, peace. So 2 weeks before the wedding, I chose myself. I walked away. And yes, people judged me, but they didn't understand what I had seen, what I had almost lost. Sometimes the bravest decision isn't moving forward. It's knowing when to stop. Watching shows Richard would have hated, small freedoms, quiet choices, little pieces of a life that finally felt like mine. And slowly, without even realizing it, I started giving them up. Not because Walter asked me to, but because I'd been trained to. That's what decades of marriage do. You learn to adjust, to accommodate, to shrink yourself just enough to fit into someone else's world. And one day, you don't even notice you've disappeared. I saw it happening to me, and I knew if I married Walter, I would spend the rest of my life doing it again. Then my friend Dorothy came over one afternoon. She had remarried 3 years earlier, and I'd been curious, hopeful even, about how it turned out. She looked tired. How's married life? I asked. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. It's fine, she said. He's a good man. Then she paused. I just miss having my own space sometimes, my own schedule. She looked down at her hands. He gets upset if I'm gone too long. Says I'm choosing my friends over him, my daughter over him. I tai ki sinki. Her voice softened. I thought companionship meant sharing life, but it feels like I have to explain my life. She was 75 years old, and she was right back where she'd been at 35, managing someone else's emotions, explaining her choices, apologizing for having a life outside of him. The freedom she'd found after her first husband died, gone. Sometimes I miss living alone, she said quietly, and then I feel guilty for missing it because I'm supposed to be grateful someone wants me. That night, I sat alone in my kitchen, and I thought about something I had never truly considered before. Who was I, without being someone's wife? I had spent 46 years as Richard's wife, rarely just Margaret. And only now, at 75, I had started to discover her habits, her preferences, her rhythm, her freedom. Did I really want to give that up before I even understood it? The answer came quietly, but it was clear. No, a necessity kind. That was the second reason. Not fear, not bitterness, but the loss of a self I had only just begun to find. Satalta Santa. Still, I didn't call off the wedding. I told myself I could have both. Marriage and independence, love and autonomy. I was wrong. Tasati no time. I started writing everything down. The patterns, the warnings, the truths no one talks about. It became something bigger than me, a message for women like me, women who were about to make decisions they didn't fully understand. Some people didn't like it. My son David still calls me, asking me to take it down. Says it sounds harsh, unromantic, embarrassing. People will think you're against love, he says, but I'm not against love. I'm against losing yourself in the name of it. I can't and the letters I received, they told me I wasn't wrong. Women who paused, women who walked away, women who chose themselves, sometimes for the first time in their lives. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Then came the third reason, and it nearly broke my heart. Mangi. My daughter Linda asked me to meet her for lunch. Just the two of us. She was quiet, nervous. Finally, she looked at me and said, "Mom, what happens to the house if you marry Walter?" I didn't have an answer. "And your savings?" She asked. "Your retirement. What you said you were leaving us." I felt defensive. "Why are you asking me this?" Her eyes filled with tears. Because I'm scared. I'm scared we're going to lose you," she said. "Not to death, to someone we barely know. I'm scared we'll have to fight a stranger for our own family's memories. It's not about money, Mom. It's about watching you give everything away to someone who's only known you for months." We didn't speak for 3 days after that, but her words stayed with me. I went to an estate attorney, and what he told me changed everything. "Once you remarry," he said, "your husband becomes your legal priority, not your children. Even your will can be challenged and often overridden." And so I sat there, stunned. Everything I had built, everything I had planned to leave behind, could be taken out of my children's hands, not because anyone was cruel, but because the law works that way. That was the third reason, and it was starting to feel heavy, almost unbearable. And then came the fourth, and it was something I couldn't ignore. My friend Ruth had remarried at 69. Her husband was healthy, active, full of life, until he wasn't. By 71, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's. By 72, she was dressing him, feeding him, managing his medications. By 73, she was exhausted. Completely drained. "I'm so tired, Margaret," she told me one afternoon. "I thought I was gaining a partner, but I became a caregiver. I don't have the strength for this anymore." And the truth hit me hard. Marriage after 60 isn't just companionship. It's a commitment to uncertainty, to illness, to decline. And more often than not, it's the woman who carries the burden. I had already walked that path once. I had cared for Richard through his final years. I knew what it cost. And I knew I didn't have it in me to do it again. That was the fourth reason. But the fifth was the one that changed everything. I asked myself one simple question. Why am I doing this? And the answer wasn't love. It wasn't joy. It wasn't even true companionship. Wartantarisa. It was pressure, expectation, fear of being alone. Samasantiyas. I had been taught my whole life that a woman without a man is incomplete, that being alone means something is missing, that independence is failure. But sitting there, in the quiet of my own life, I realized something powerful. Those weren't truths. They were beliefs, and They were wrong. The truth was simple. I liked my life. I liked my space. I liked becoming someone I had never been allowed to be. And marriage would take that away. Hasatandaning. So 2 weeks before the wedding, I chose myself, not out of fear, but out of understanding. Sometimes the most important love story is the one where you finally stop abandoning yourself, whatever that means to you. Because in the end, I realized something I had spent a lifetime not understanding. Permission is not something you wait for. It's something you take. Permission to say no to expectations. Permission to choose silence over pressure. Permission to live the rest of your life on your own terms, even if others don't understand it. And I understood something else, too. No one was ever going to give me that permission. Not my children, not my friends, not society, not even someone who claimed to love me. I had to give it to myself. And so I did. I called off the wedding 2 weeks before. I told Walter the truth, that I couldn't go through with it, that I needed to live alone, that I needed to rediscover myself before I could belong to anyone again. He didn't take it well. He was angry, hurt, disappointed. He said I had wasted his time. He said I was selfish. He said I would regret it, that I would grow old and die alone. And maybe he was right about one thing. Maybe I will die alone, but I will not regret it, because I would rather die alone and free than die surrounded by people and erased from myself. I am grateful now, not for the easy path, but for the difficult choice, for disappointing people, for being misunderstood, for being called selfish, bitter, afraid. Because none of those words were true. I wasn't afraid of being alone. I was finally, after a lifetime of living for others, clear about what I wanted, and what I wanted was myself, whole, free, uncompromised. And Tanti, thank you for sitting with me, for listening to something many people don't want to hear until it's too late, for understanding that sometimes the most loving thing a person can do is refuse to abandon themselves. If you ever find yourself standing at that same crossroads, I hope you remember this. You are not required to disappear in order to be loved. You are allowed to choose yourself. Take care of yourself, whatever that means for you.